On behalf of the legislative delegation from the Lenexa area, I'd like to welcome everyone. It's a great opportunity to strengthen relationships, communication, and understanding between the Lenexa state legislators and their constituents. Thank you so much for being engaged and being here. And I mean that to you because I consider you all to be involved community members, and the more of you we have, the better off we all are. These folks have taken it to a whole different level, and I think the way to think of them is they're more involved community-involved volunteers, because none of these folks make a living out of being a state senator or a state representative, even though it might seem it's a whole career of time that you spend in speak of. So, just a couple thoughts about that. Should be a learning experience. These folks are going to share their views with you. And what it's not is, this isn't a campaign rally. You're not out there to change them or unelect them or re-elect them. They're here to share their views with you and help you learn what their positions are. So keep that in mind as you move forward in the question and answer and participation. I'd like to take a moment to recognize elected officials who are here with us today. I know there's at least one. Please stand and wave. Thank you. Thank you for coming, Mike. Our plan is to start by giving each of the legislators 4 to 5 minutes, which is hard to do, I'm sure, to provide individual remarks on the state legislative session so far and what they see ahead in the wrap-up session to begin on Monday. And let's begin by introducing our legislators. You guys are assigned your parade wave, right? So first we have here is Dinah Sykes. She was first elected to the Senate in 2016. Her district is 21 and includes the entire city of Lenexa. Next to her is Representative Tom Cox. Tom was first elected to the House in 2016. He is District 17 and includes part of north central Lenexa. Next to him is Linda Gallagher. Linda is first elected to the House in 2014. Her House District 23 includes northeast Lenexa. Cindy Holscher was first elected to the House in 2016. Her House District 16 includes a small part of East Lenexa. There's always hope you might get more Lenexa in the future. We're all looking forward to the next redistricting, right? Yeah. John Resman is the newest delegation member, selected by precinct committee members in February to replace resigned Mike Keegerl. His House District 121 includes western Lenexa. And I also should note that there are 2 members of the Lenexa delegation, Representative Keith Esau representing House District 14 and Representative Randy Powell representing House District 30, who are unfortunately out of town and were unable to attend today. So let's start with opening remarks.
Thank you, Mike. First, I want to thank you for coming out on this rainy morning and for being engaged. I know it's easy to kind of put off something and say, you know, if I'm not involved, I can't complain. But I really, truly believe that the more involved we are and the more engaged, the better our society is. So thank you very much for being a part of that. This is my first session, and it has been a whirlwind, a lot of learning. I love what I am doing. There are frustrating times, and there are times that you think the process is like wading through molasses, and that is very true. But, we have to be very thoughtful and work through the process, and my hope is that when we go back to our veto session, that we don't just try to jam everything in the first few days. No, we actually work through the process and take our time and pass good policy. So I will tell you, going in, I'm not going to vote for something just so I can get out of town and get back to my family. As much as I want to be at those soccer games and be with my family, I think good policy is what we need to do. So I hope that my colleagues in the Senate are there with me. I believe they are. I'm getting texts from several of them this morning at 7 o'clock, we are committed to figuring out the budget issue, figuring out school finance. So I think, that is the answer, and I am very honored to work with some great people. We didn't get a lot done in our first part of the session. It is unfortunate. I think, we passed a tax bill that was vetoed and we did not override it. And we have not, in the Senate especially, we have not worked on school finance. On the House side, I think they have a good bill in committee, which I think will come out of committee and come over to the Senate side. I'm not sure exactly what the Senate approach on that bill will be. I know the Senate Committee on Education and Finance will not meet until Wednesday, from what I've heard. But I am, committed, and I know our Ways and Means have been meeting this week, and they are committed to, a structural fix. And their budget is worked around having some more money and working at filling the gaps, making sure we are funding our core functions of government. There's still a lot to do. I encourage your emails. I encourage your phone calls. As we go back, most of us will have our assistants for about 2 weeks, and then they are gone. So it takes a little bit longer for us to respond to your emails because we don't have someone helping us out or answering those phone calls. So if we're on the floor, we're not as readily available to do that as when we have an assistant who can help us through that. I am honored to serve you in Lenexa, and I hope that you see that, we may not always agree on an issue, but I will listen, and at the end of the day, working together and figuring out our differences and looking at someone's viewpoints, we will put our state back on good, sound governing. So I will keep it short because Tom likes to talk.
The senator knows me so well. I will say the House has done a lot. It's the Senate. So
we do have a budget.
True. We passed a tax plan and overrode a veto. No, there's a joke in the House that said if you want to get anything passed in the House, tell everyone the Senate opposes it. So we have a really fun rivalry up there between the two. I could just echo a lot of the things Dinah said. I think she said so much. People keep asking me how long we're going to be up there, and I say until we're done, until we get everything done. They say how long will that take? I don't know, but I'm not coming home. I'm not voting to adjourn until we've accomplished everything we set out there to do, and that is tax reform. That's a balanced budget for 18-19. That's school finance. We made commitment to have a vote on the campus carry issue. So we have a lot still left to do, and I'm not going to vote to adjourn until we've accomplished those tasks. My district, I have North Central Lenexa, but then I have Central Shawnee and Lake Quivira as well. Representative Gallagher and I were just joking when they made the redistricting joke. We are on the opposite sides of Plum, which is our line between our two districts. So if we're both still in the House in 2022, we have to be really careful how we're redistricting, or we might like a mile or like a half a mile redistricting and we're in each other's districts. So I don't know if I'm crazy enough to just try to be here in 2022 though. I think government governs best closest to the people. And that is why I've always been such a strong supporter of local government. Because you get the most accurate representation. It is easier to accurately represent the people when the people's voice is more easily heard. And that's why I try to instill the most authority we can in cities and counties and school boards. Because that is where your voice is most powerful. Because one city might want a different policy on economic development, let's say, than the other city does. And so if we try to do these broad strokes as the state government, one city might get screwed while the other city gets what they want, instead of letting both cities have what they want. The same reason, I want more control at the state level than I want at the federal level. So I really do appreciate that everyone is taking the time to be here, to coming out and making their voice heard, to engage in the community, because it does make a huge difference. And so thank you for coming out today and listening, and I just want to make sure to give you guys plenty of time to answer questions, or ask questions.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Linda Gallagher. I want to welcome you to House District 23. We're in that now. Although right across the street to the west is, or Plum is my western boundary, so District 30 is across the street to the west. My district also includes parts of Shawnee and Overland Park, as well as half of it is Lenexa. It runs from 71st Street on the north to 95th or 99th on the south, and Plum on the west to mostly Schweitzer on the east. And I am in my second term in the House, and it is a tremendous honor to serve the people of my district, and I do enjoy it. It has its moments, its challenging moments, and we're going to face some of those challenging moments here in the veto session, or the wrap-up session, as it really more accurately should be called. I'm the only person on the panel here who is not a freshman, and so I thought I would talk a little bit about the differences I see between my first term and this second term, and they are huge. And it has just been like a breath of fresh air this year in the legislature, in the House anyway. I can't speak for the Senate. Mostly for two reasons. Mostly, we have 45 new representatives who were elected last fall, and they came to Topeka ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work and get things done. They ran on wanting to change the status quo on various topics, and that's what I've been about as well. And we have come so close. We have done a lot of good work in the House, as Representative Cox said, and we've come so close to overriding the governor's two vetoes, or we did override his tax veto. Excuse me. We came very close to overriding the Medicaid expansion veto. And the other reason for the breath of fresh air is the new leadership in the House. It's made up of both more conservative factions of the House and more the moderate faction as well. And they're working together very well, and they're committed to transparency, allowing everyone's voice to be heard, and everyone to have a seat at the table. And that is not how it was in my first term. It was very frustrating, the way things were handled under leadership before. So I think we've done we've had the opportunity to do some great work simply because bills are being allowed to come up for a vote that never would have before, in particular Medicaid expansion. And you know, we have a lot more work to do, but I'm encouraged that we will get there. You do have to let the process play out. You have to be patient. And regarding the tougher things like the budget and tax, you have to. I joke that our backs haven't been against the wall yet. You know, I was here 2 years ago when we were in session for 114 days. That was a record-long session. I sure hope we aren't there that long this year. But like the others, I'm ready. I'm going there with the idea of, as long as it takes, let's get it right. Let's not rush into anything just to wrap it up and get home. Of course, the others have talked about the big issues we have to do. One of the smaller issues that I am hopeful we'll be able to get done when we go back is something that I've been working on all session as vice chair of the House Children and Seniors Committee, and that is foster care reform. We've been working all session on looking into the problems in the foster care system, and we are hoping to get a bill passed to create a task force to look into the problems in the foster care system and come up with a corrective action plan to recommend to the legislature next session. The bill needs some tweaking. We need to, I'm hopeful that it will be able to get passed by the House and then get put onto a conference committee report to pass the both houses. Just yesterday, the Legislative Post-Audit Committee released the Part 3 of 3 reports on their audit of the foster care system in Kansas, and I went up to Topeka yesterday to hear a presentation on that report. We've been waiting this for months, for a long time, and this report and the other 2 and other reports that have been done will help to inform the work of that task force if we can just get that bill passed. Thank you.
All right, you know me, I got guys stand up. I had to see you all out there. I'm Cindy Holscher, representative from District 16, which contains Overland Park and parts of Lenexa. It is a very, as I say, robust area in the respect that we have all 3 school districts that come together in my district. It's also a business hub. The Oak Park Mall is in there, as well as many businesses along the College and Quivira corridors. Also, we have Johnson County Community College, pretty much right in the middle of the district, and then Overland Park Regional. So a lot of things happening in the area. This is my first term. Very excited to represent the people of Lenexa as well as Overland Park and Kansas in general. Because part of the reason I ran is because the feeling that the people weren't being represented. So that's why I'm there along with many of my fellow newcomers to the legislature. Committees, everybody usually wants to know what committees we're serving on. Initially, I was on water and environment, as well as healthcare. Those committees essentially have finished up their work, so to speak. And while I'm not a formal member, I do attend the education committee meetings because it is a vested interest to me what happens in that committee because I have 3 kiddos in public schools, and not just my kids, but all the kids in Kansas. I want to ensure that every kid has access to a good education. And the secondary part of that is then ensuring that there's opportunity available in the marketplace. So those are areas of my focus. I've joked in the past that no matter what committee you end up on, there's a crisis to solve. And there is, even on health or even on water and environment. We have big issues there looming in the horizon. We have an aquifer that is drying up, that is basically what fuels or what helps us in parts of western Kansas. So we have things to worry about in that regard. But other issues, my big focus for most of the session has been on Medicaid expansion. And I've advocated for it on the floor, behind the scenes. 82% of Kansans, the people, want Medicaid expansion. So we are fighting for that and fighting for that. And should it come up again before the session ends, I'll be fighting for it some more. To me, that is something worth fighting. I think some people are somewhat frustrated in the respect that the big issues haven't been handled. The budget, tax reform, school finance. I think as Dinah pointed out earlier, there's a lot of progress on school finance, and I've been attending those meetings and watching what is going on. The good news is it does seem to be coming together. So while there are some things that kind of go back to the past as far as the school funding formula, there are some new things in there as far as funding all-day kindergarten. That's a great thing. Increasing the amount of funding, that's a great thing, and it has to happen for us to move forward. But like I said, I know there's been frustration that some of the big things haven't been handled, but I want to remind everybody where we were just a year ago. A year ago at this point, the governor could get pretty much whatever he wanted, and that included some pretty horrible legislation. Things are different this year. So we have moved from the governor getting everything he wanted to a point where we've stopped that. And we're starting to fix things, and that's good. And while we didn't get the override yet for Medicaid expansion, we have posted some great numbers, and that shows that we are working together. We have a great number of people who are there wanting to solve problems. That is our interest. So while we made progress, we still do have a ways to go. And I am confident that when we come back next week, that, you know, we may have to endure a little bit more of certain factions wanting things like it has been, and supporting the governor. We have to kind of wait that out, and then hopefully it comes back to getting together and figuring out what's going to be best for Kansas. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
I'm John Resman, and my district is the 121st. I have the corner of 810 and K7, the northwest corner of the district.
There you go.
And I've been in for 2.5 months. As I was when I got to the legislature, the committees I serve on were beginning to wind down, so I had very little input into anything that really happened in the first session that I'm there. I won't keep you very long. I may want to get to questions. I serve on 3 committees, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
legislators talking and extra time left at the end. Boy. So I don't know, I feel a bit like a game show host, which I didn't think I anticipated. But I have a range of questions, and you may recognize yours particular question as being asked, or I may paraphrase it, so bear with me. The first one is very specific, and I don't know who would know about this, so this is sort of open to who's interested in responding to each question. This one is very specific. It says, with the federal action to allow internet service providers to sell customer information, do you support the legislation introduced by Representative Clayton to have state law prevent them from selling customer information?
I'll start on that one. I haven't read the exact bill that Representative Clayton has put together, but in theory, yes. And I say, you don't want to commit to something, to a bill until you've actually read it, because sometimes you agree with 80% and there's 20 really bad percent, or well-intentioned thing written in there that has some very bad unintended consequences. Though Representative Clayton is very passionate about this, about transparency, and so I'm sure it's a good bill, but I have spoken with her a little bit, and in theory, yes, I do support that. I just think that's absurd. That's just going in the wrong direction of being able to sell our private usage data on that. So I think we can follow the model of a few other states that have already passed legislation like this and try to protect Kansans, since the federal government is not interested in doing that.
I don't really have anything to add on that. I just agree with what Representative Cox's position is.
I agree as well, and actually last Friday I was at Olathe Northwest listening to freshmen in their pre-AP English class, and this was actually one of the presentations that I listened to, and it was very interesting because the kids were talking that this was going to actually cost us more if we do not pass legislation, because then your internet providers would offer that option if you paid a fee so that your information would not be sold. So.
I'll just say ditto.
Thank you. You guys are good. Oh, sorry. You can talk on that?
I have to agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, you just have to hold it like really close.
I have to agree. Anytime someone else has your information, they can use it for not very good things. I retired from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, and I've taken many reports over the years on.
I really can't hear you.
Okay. You just hold it up to your mouth more.
Real close.
Get it as close as possible.
I retired from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, and I've taken many reports where people's information has been hacked, and the consequences that have happened over the years of them trying to straighten out their lives, costing them thousands of dollars, and then hopefully they can get their lives back on track. So anytime anyone has more information about you, there's a likelihood or a potential that it's going to be misused. And let's face it, the internet has a lot more misuses than it does good things that it provides.
Thank you. Moving to the next question, deal with your position and your expectations on changing the rules for guns in colleges.
I think this will come up again in the House and the Senate. The House tried to bring it above the line and they did not have the votes. The Senate has not looked at it at all. I think this week with the governors asking for $24 million to help provide security for the mental health hospitals, I think that will bring it again to the table. I personally, local control, I think we should exempt our hospitals and our schools, but at the end of the day, if our colleges want that and they want rules and regulations, I would give them that power. But personally, as a mom and someone who will have college students in a few years, I do not support it. I think they're young and we do not require a license or training, and we're just asking for trouble, in my opinion.
I would agree with a lot of that. Many of us have made a commitment to bring a bill to the floor in the veto session to have this debate. We delayed a vote on it to allow a potential compromise to still work its way through, because we're trying to make sure something passes. And this is a difficult issue. At any town hall I go to, I talk about this and say that guns are a far more difficult issue than people in Johnson County realize, because most people here think you want to allow people to freely carry guns on college campuses. Why? But you have to go to the rest of the state and realize that there are people, especially in the rural parts of our state, that don't have that mentality at all. There are people where if they polled their district, 90% of the people would say keep guns on campus. And so they're not going to go vote against the vast majority of their district. And that's strange to a lot of us, because it's just a different climate. These are people that, you have high schoolers with shotguns in their car parked on the high school, because that's just every day. That's just normal in their community. And so you're combining these different views. And so you have a lot of the people that are just no votes on this stuff no matter what, because their districts will get so riled up, they don't care to listen to the information or how it impacts the colleges or the economic development of the state, which then trickles in and funds their schools and things like that. They're not concerned about that. They think, don't touch my guns. And so it's very hard in the state of Kansas to get enough votes on these issues. So we're very focused on how can we work on compromise, because we need to get something passed. I think realistically the right path is separating out hospitals and separating out college campuses into two different bills. Because you have different support groups. You have a lot of people that do support, will jump on the hospital, but they say they will vote no if college campuses are attached to that. So it's about, you have different groups in those. So I think realistically by separating those out, it will create more specific debate on them. My fear is that if you put them into one bill, that more than I think we could pass the House, and I can't speak for the Senate, but I don't know if we get 21 votes. Probably. I am almost assured that there's not 84 votes on a veto override on that bill, which is why the compromise and trying to work something out is so important, because I can pretty much promise you 84 votes do not exist on that issue. So we have to find something that can pass, that's better than it is now. And I am committed to working on a solution. And if we can't come to a compromise, I will be voting to change the law, like Senator Sykes said. Because at the end of the day, I will still be casting my vote in that way, because I'm going to cast what's right for my district, what's right for our state, what's right for our hospitals and universities. And they don't need people to freely carry guns in their buildings.
I've said before, this is one of the top 3 issues for me that I wanted to get done this year, is to extend or make permanent the exemption for college campuses and universities on guns. And I do think we will have a bill or bills to vote on here in the veto session. What they'll look like, who knows? I did not vote for the Jim Ward motion the last week of the regular session to bring a gun bill up for debate in the House. And the reason I did that is the timing just wasn't right. There were negotiations, have been negotiations going on between House leadership and the Kansas Rifle Association, the NRA, the hospitals, and if we had had an open debate on this issue at that point, it would have brought those negotiations to an end. And we might have ended up with nothing to be able to pass, that we could pass. That doesn't mean that I don't want to have a debate or a vote on exempting colleges and hospitals from open carry. Nothing could be farther from the truth. It's just the timing. We are headed for a vote, and I absolutely, whether it's a bill allowing local option for campuses or just outright extending the exemption across the board, I will, depending on what else they put in the bill, you can't ever say you'll support a bill until you see it, but I absolutely want to see this get done. Realistically though, I don't know if we can get it done for both campuses and hospitals. We will have to see. Regarding the governor's throwing out that $24 million figure yesterday, he didn't really intend for us to come up with that money for hospitals. No public hospital, no university, no college has the money it would take to put enough metal detectors and guards at every entrance to get that done. Johnson County Community College alone, it would cost $20 million the first year. That's impossible. And it's not necessary, let's just keep the exemption.
one of the issues that kind of keeps me up at night. I have 3 kids. My oldest is almost 14. We'll be looking at colleges in a few years. It's a concern, and it's one of the issues that I get tons of emails about and phone calls. So overwhelmingly, I would say, there's a train. Maybe I'll just wait it out. Overwhelmingly, people that I'm hearing from want the exemption continued, and that is definitely what I'll be supporting.
I hope that they're able to separate guns from hospitals and schools and to still be able to keep people that legally want to keep their guns from keeping their guns and not having a problem doing what they want to legally do what they want. I spent 21 years in investigations with the Sheriff's Office, and over that time I investigated about 25 homicides, so I'm very familiar with the damage guns can do. I also realized that when kids go to college, like my son did, drinking is a subject that they take up when they go to college. And I know alcohol and guns don't mix. And my concern would be if you put an 18-year-old with a gun in his hand and he's even drinking or vice versa, that you're asking for trouble. So, being the newest member, I hope that we can separate the issue between guns and hospitals and also satisfy the people that really want to keep their guns and not infringe on their rights. I don't know if that can be done. The panel here has a lot more experience than I do, but I hope we can do that. And if it comes down to that, that's the way I hope.
Thank you. Those are interesting responses. The next topic is a tiny little one called taxes. So I'm going to start with sort of the overall status of the tax plan, and then I have several pointed questions, and if you don't touch on them, I'll go back to them and ask for specifics. But generally, the 2 tax plans and where you think it might go.
You want to start on that in this sense? Starting tax plan.
I'm guessing people were asking about the flat tax or the number of brackets. I can imagine those are 2 tax issues.
Wherever you want to go.
When I look at taxes, I look at, I said this yesterday too, I look at my neighborhood. I live in an old section of development that I live in, and most of the people in my neighborhood are retired. There are a few new families in there with kids. The family right across the street from me, both parents work, they have 3 kids. The lady who lives right next door to me is a single mom with a child. Whenever taxes are subject to taxes come up, I always think of the people that are fixed incomes, like there's people that are retirement, or how it's going to affect the family. And starting in April 1st, we have the 4% sales tax here in Johnson County. That's going to affect them directly. We had reevaluations here throughout the state. That's their home. Real estate taxes are going up, and now the state of Kansas is going to come along with their handout and ask for more money. Raising taxes is not it affects people in different ways, and I would like to have at least impact on at least those 2 groups. Not raising taxes, but I know we're going to have to because it's the school funding, but I would like to limit the amount of taxes that we raise to pay for the things that we have to pay for.
All right, if you're asking about the flat tax, that's the one that keeps coming back and dying and coming back and dying. For the most part, I will say those of us that are newly elected, as well as many moderates, Democrats in the House, we are standing strong against the flat tax. And this is kind of the period too where you wait it out, where it might come back again, and we wait it out, hoping to get a fairer tax structure. It's interesting because I read something the other day that the more Kansans learn about the tax policy, the less they like it. And there's a reason. We have the 8th most unfair tax policy in the nation. It's disproportionate. When we take a look at the whole structure, really what we're looking at is potentially repealing the LLC tax exemption. I think most people feel that that has to happen, but there's also other intricacies there. As far as the cuts that went through in 2012, also what happened was that top bracket went from 6.4 to 4.6. Your top wage earners are paying substantially less. So what we're talking about there again is a disproportionate tax system that then we got the food tax thrown in and the sales tax. So what we've done here is we've given relief to the higher wage earners, and then we've hurt the lower wage earners through sales tax. And a high portion of that is on the food tax. So it is out of balance. So that's what we've got to work on. And again, that's why we are kind of waiting. I don't want to settle for a package that continues to be unfair, like a flat tax. So we keep waiting it out, getting a complete plan, and we have to face it. We have a $900 million shortfall. Just the LLC exemption will not fix that. So we do have to have an overhaul, and an overhaul that is fair.
Just to follow on what Representative Holscher said, not only do we have a $900 million shortfall, but we are about $1.8 billion, we have taken in $1.8 billion less since the income tax cuts of 2012 came in. So, you know, we had a surplus. When I first ran for office in 2014, we had a surplus at that time of about $700 million. We've blown through that. And now we're looking at a $900 million shortfall for the next 2 years. It's obvious the income tax cuts of 2012 must be rolled back. What we need is a comprehensive tax reform package that is fair across the board, not across the board, not flat tax. Fair and equitable for everyone, so everyone pays their fair share, including business owners. I do believe whatever tax package we end up with, the business exemption will be done away with. There's just a lot of sentiment recognizing that needs to happen. But that alone doesn't raise enough money. So it only raises about $250 million a year. And we need a lot more than that. So we need a return to three income tax brackets, which House Bill 2178 that we passed earlier this session and that the House overrode the veto on. It had 3 brackets. Still, each bracket about a percentage point lower than what income taxes were before in 2012. And we also need to reduce reliance on sales and property taxes. A lot of the income tax increase, the record income tax increase that was passed in, I forget whether it was 2015 or 2016, increased $400 million. I voted against that because it didn't address the underlying revenue problem, and that was the income tax cuts. A flat tax is a non-starter in my opinion. It was a waste of time for the Senate to spend as much time on it as they did. I am hearing that the Senate is going to try, and some in the House want to try a 2-bracket tax bill. I would not support that either because it doesn't raise enough money. And we have gone through about all the one-time fixes we can on the budget, sweeping every penny out of that we can out of the highway fund, delaying capers payments, creative accounting here and there. We had to liquidate a sizable portion of our long-term investment funds just to balance this fiscal year before June 30th to make up the $280 million deficit we had this year. So what ultimately will happen, who knows? But it's kind of, at this point in the veto session, it'll be like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. What parts of the tax package will get 63, 21, and 1. The votes needed in the House, Senate, and the governor's approval.
It's really 84 and 27 and 0. Just clarify. Which is an issue we've never had. And a lot of the issues we're talking about, campus carry being one of them, you know how we solve that? 2018 governor election. That's the real issue. So, getting 84 votes and 27 is extremely difficult. Getting 80 votes is extremely difficult. The fact that we had 81 votes on Medicaid expansion is mind-blowing and still, you didn't go through. I mean, this is unprecedented in Kansas history that we have this many people voting in the House and the Senate, and then it's getting shot down and things are getting blocked. So that's why elections matter. They have long-term consequences. The flat tax is dead. I mean, you really can't beat that horse anymore. I think in the Senate, it getting 3 votes was pretty much there's no one, like the House leadership looks at that and goes, yeah, we're not even gonna touch that. So that's out of the water. What Representative Gallagher said, it looks like there's 2 different plans that are kind of be talked about. One's a 2-tier system, or 2-tier bracket, and one's a 3-tier. I haven't seen what the numbers are on the 2-tier and how much revenue will change. We don't know exactly the 3-tier. I think they're going to propose something 3-tier that's almost identical to what we've already passed. Probably removes retroactivity, if not for both LLCs and for income, at least for income, and may leave it on for LLCs. I don't know, I've heard different talks about that, but that is one of the major sticking points that a lot of senators said, I can't support this because of retroactivity. So if you remove that, say, okay, then why can't you support this now? I think we got the percentages wrong, honestly, on the last one. I think we should look to see if we can't drop the bottom bracket a little bit more. I think the middle bracket was a little too high, and I think the top bracket was a little too low. And so I think we should do a little shifting there. I don't know numbers off the top of my head, because really you have to take the numbers and then run it through research who will tell you, if you shift the percentages, here's how much revenue it's estimated to generate. But I think that's the general idea of what we can do and what we need to do. And then at the end of the day, we have to look at how much revenue does it generate and how much revenue do we need. The $900 million in the whole is over 2 years, so it shifts year to year. I think it's like 500 next year and like 450 the next, or 400, yeah, I can't remember. So that's a major part of that. So when we're always talking about those numbers, or someone says, oh, they raised $1 billion in taxes, that's over 2 years. I don't know why everyone always says 2 years. Maybe it's because we do the budget on 2 years. Representative Gallagher is nodding at me. That's probably why they keep doing 2 years. But yeah, so that's what those numbers, just as clarification when they talk about them, those 2 years. So I'm very confident we're going to get something done. I don't think it's going to be something like the flat tax. I think it's going to be something very similar to what we've already passed, hopefully a better version of it. We have 85 votes in the House, and honestly, I think we have more than 85 votes to support something like that, and we're 3 shy in the Senate, so, and everyone knows they don't get to go home until we pass this. So I think those 3 will eventually come on board.
I echo what you've heard from many of the others. At the end of the day, for me to vote for a tax plan, it has to be a structural fix. There is some talk that when we get back, the Senate will run the bill 2178, taking out the retroactivity on the individual. I don't know that I will vote for that, because I don't know at the end of the day that it will bring in enough money. I haven't seen the financial note on it, but I'm not going to vote for a bill that then I'm going to have to next year continue to make cuts because of it's got to be a structural fix for me.
Thank you. A few items that are specific that you didn't touch on. One is your position on a proposed utility fee.
No, I think if we have a comprehensive structural fix for a tax plan, we do not have to do that. I think the $3 on your water bill, your gas bill, and your electric is very regressive. Just this week, Death and Bob charged me a $5 fee because I get a paper version of my bill. And you may want to look at that. I signed up for an email version of my bill instead of for on my pay, just because I didn't want to pay the extra fee. So I do not support it. I think it may bring more conversation for others to get on board with a structural fix on a tax bill, because instead of nickeling and diming in all of these, if we do a comprehensive plan that raises the money we need for our core services, I think that is much more tolerable than to add a fee here, increase food sales tax. I think trying to be responsible and actually structure one area is the best bet.
I'll say I'm open to the conversation because we need to review every avenue, honestly. I haven't studied in depth. I mean, I know looking at it, it'd be roughly $9 a month per household, which would generate about $150 million a year. That would be earmarked towards education. Unless it's in the Constitution, they can earmark it for whatever they want and then they change it, aka roads. So we do have to look at all the avenues possible, especially if we're talking about putting $750 million more a year into education, K-12 education. That's going to require, probably almost doubling what we're looking at on tax increases. So you're talking about raising annual revenue from, right now we're looking at $500 million a year to, now you're talking about like $1.25 billion a year to cover that. And so we have to, if those are the things we want, we have to be willing to look at all the options of how we're going to fund these things. Governing is hard. You have to make hard decisions. You have to make decisions sometimes you really don't like, but you have to think, what is best for my district? What is best for the state? What are best for the people I'm here to represent? So I can't say that I'm not going to consider these options. I mean, we have to look at what everything else is being done. I don't like the concept of it terribly, because I think utility fees and taxes are one of the most unpopular things to do. But I will consider it just like anything else put in front of me. I will give it a fair hearing and a fair look, because I'm up there to solve the problem. We have issues, and I'm trying to figure out how do we solve them. And so I'm open to the solutions to do it.
I also would be, I'm not going to rule that out. I need to study it. I would be willing to, have the discussion about that. But that is being considered as an option to help fund the school funding, the increased school funding in the K-12 funding bill. And that calls for $150 million extra per year over 5 years, up to $750 million in the 5th year. We've got to find a source of income for that. This, the House Bill 2178, the money that raises is just to cover it doesn't include school funding, increases in school funding. So we've got to find some source to fund that. And, my first thought was, boy, I don't know if I could support that. But then when I thought about it, talked to some people about it, the fees, it's just a little over $100 a year per household. And it's a steady source of income, because those utility bills aren't something that go away, So it would be a steady source of funding for schools. And, it's not a done deal, but we do need to look at all options.
I'm opposed to that type of a tax, a utility tax. The reason being, I think Senator Sykes said this, it's not a structural fix for one. My biggest issue, though, is it's regressive. That $100 a year, it hurts the poor in our society. So I struggle with the fact that we gave a tax break, again, to the highest wage earners, the 6.4 going down to 4.6. And now we're expecting everybody, including the poorest in our populations, to come up with the money to get us out of debt. So I feel very much we've got to keep focused on finding that complete structural fix, getting a tax plan in place that is fair and is adequate. And that's what I think we need to keep looking at.
I would be opposed to this type of tax also, for the simple fact is that we start taxing utilities this year, what do we tax next year, and then the year after that? And even if it would raise $150 million to pay for the first year of increase for school spending, what are we going to tax next year to pay for the other next $150 that are coming down the road? So I would oppose a tax like this, just for the simple fact is that we're just starting to nitpick different areas to start taxing.
I want to add one other thing to that we didn't mention, and the business increase would be $10 per water utility, and I think that's very unfair also to, if it's a big business versus a small business. $30, $360 for a small business is very different than $360 for a large corporation. So I think that's another issue to look at on that.
Thank you, Representative Resman. You might start coming back this way on the subject of a tobacco tax increase as a funding mechanism.
Well, like I just said, this is another nitpick type of tax where we're just going to pick one item and we're going to tax it. Now also the alcohol and now utilities, like I said earlier, what's next that we're going to tax, which is just going to add to people that's on fixed incomes and families that are just trying to survive every day. So I think starting to nitpick these little taxes, I think, is the wrong way to go.
Honestly, I have to take a look at that more closely. I haven't made my mind up. I struggle with the fact that, again, we're looking at another area, kind of nitpicking as John was saying. But the other issue is that a tax on cigarettes, it deters smoking. And we pay a lot as a society every year to take care of that issue as far as people who are affected by cancer and other health concerns. So, like I said, I have to look at the fact, does the deterrence factor outweigh other issues? So I have not made my mind up.
I do support an increase in cigarette taxes. The amount is to be determined. The governor had proposed as much as $1.50 per pack increase. I think that's too much. We just raised it, I think, 75 cents a couple of years ago. But I could support, perhaps another 75 cents. For the primary reason that it does deter smoking. It would deter more young people from starting to smoke in the first place. And it would help reduce our healthcare costs in Kansas. And the Cancer Society, KU Hospital, KU Cancer Center are all in favor of this, and I simply support it.
I am also torn on this issue for some of the reasons I talked about. One, people who tend to be tobacco users tend to be a larger cost burden on the state, especially later in life, whether it's through Medicaid. There's a variety of issues. The flip side is the majority of tobacco users tend to be lower income. So this is a regressive tax where you're putting the tax burden again on people usually, not always, but usually as a larger portion, on lower income people. And that then goes again against what I think is solving the problem. So I'm mixed on that. Again, if you put a proposal in front of me, I will give it fair consideration, because that's what I think my job is to do for our district, is to look at the problem, look at the solutions, and find the right one. There's going to be a lot of mix of things. And I know there are going to be, again, things that I don't like that I probably have to support because it's the best path forward. When we, just to cover this year's budget, when we sold part of the long-term investment fund, I did not like that. That was not a good solution. But it was the best of the worst options we had. And so we are looking at a lot of those issues going on right now, and so I will continue to consider all of them. On this one, I'm still undecided just because, again, you're going after one classification of group, where in one aspect, they do increase the cost of government, and the other side, it's primarily people usually lower income that you're targeting on this, and they've suffered year after year of increases on those products already.
This one is one that I am looking at both sides as well. I actually met with the Cancer Society and KU Hospital while I've been on break. And if I do support it, it will be because I think it would reduce the use of tobacco and help our society be healthier. It is regressive, so I have to weigh. Right now, I probably am leaning toward that just because I think it does make our society healthier. But I am not completely 100% sure at this point. It'll be, looking at the bill and what else is included.
Last tax question so far. This one says somewhat of a different direction. This says with neighboring states with income taxes around 4.5% to 6%, how high can we increase income taxes on our residents before we have negative impact on our communities?
Do you want to start in the middle since we were taking the trap? Okay.
Now, I don't know what the percentage is, but I will tell you, when I decided to buy my house in Johnson County, I didn't look at the tax. I didn't look to see what it was in Missouri. I didn't look to see what it was in different areas. I bought my house based on the school and the quality of life. I think most people, I've talked to real estate agents, the biggest seller is a safe community and a good school district. Do I think there probably is a tipping point? Possibly. But at the end of the day, we want a good quality of life, and especially in Johnson County, we are willing to pay for that. I think there is a point, we don't want our property taxes continuing to go up and up and up. We have to be responsible, but I think I've just spent a lot of words without saying anything other than, it's a quality of life. We want to make sure it's a good school. We want great jobs. We want businesses to grow. Come here and be able to draw the employees that they need. I also want, if I dial 911, that the police or the fire department is going to go there. And that means a lot more to me than the percentage of my taxes.
I will say, it's kind of an interesting issue that really only affects Wyandotte and Johnson County, because there's not a large enough population center on a border where people could realistically be like, okay, well, I'm going to buy a house on the Oklahoma border of this city instead, where it's going to make a huge difference. I mean, 1/5 of the population of the state of Kansas is in Johnson County alone, and nearly 40% of the tax revenue. So that's the real impact. So you really have to focus on Missouri. Missouri is in the 6%, 6.5%, something like that. Plus, then you have the Kansas City, Missouri 1% tax, income tax. So we have wiggle room in that, but I don't even, we may think of that in our border area as a contributing factor, but I don't think that factors into the overall tax policy, because the rest of Kansas, they're not thinking like that compared to the other states around us, is very few districts would lose people to switching over the border. It's really, what percentage can you get to get 84 votes in 27? That's the real question. Never say never, but I would be dumbstruck if you could get 84 votes on anything at 6% is the highest top tier. This last one we got 85, but if you moved up to 6%, honestly, I don't think you have 84 votes. You probably have 63, but maybe not even that. So I think that's the real number that factors into there. Again, I think it's going to be something in the higher 5% as the top tier, something in the lower 5%, or right at 5%, middle tier, and then something either the same or hopefully, a few points lower on the bottom tier is probably the reasonable one that you can get through.
Well, the income tax cuts in 2012, they were higher than what we were proposing in House Bill 2178 by about a percentage point per bracket. And I would submit that, people weren't exactly clamoring at that point to have their income taxes reduced. It was an experiment done by the governor to try to inject some adrenaline into the economy, and as we can see, that hasn't happened. So I don't know off the top of my head what those rates were at that point. The highest one was maybe 6%, 6.5%?
6.45, 6.25, and I don't know the bottom.
So, maybe that is the threshold. I don't know for sure, but we're not proposing going back to those exact same levels. All I know is we've got to increase it from what it is. My constituents tell me they want our core services of government funded. And, folks, it takes money to do that. It just does. And it goes back to what I said before. We need a structural reform that balances our system, reduces reliance on property and sales tax. Because, property taxes, that there is talk about raising the mill levy to help pay for schools. And, everybody got the property valuations here in Johnson County, and they were a shock to a lot of us. So we don't want too much pressure on any one source of taxes. So, I'm not sure what the threshold is on income taxes, but I think we have room to to raise them still.
I was going to say ditto, but then I think one thing that maybe hasn't been mentioned is that I do think we do get to a tipping point on the tax situation, just like Linda was saying, you know, when people opened up their bills, there was some sticker shock there. So yes, we do get to a tipping point there, but I think we have seen a negative effect, in particular with the sales tax. And I think as Tom pointed out, you know, we have a lot of areas on the border there where people can choose to go to a lower sales tax, they're going to do it. So that hurts our revenue overall, but it also hurts our local businesses. And so we're supposed to have this effect of bringing in more revenue. It hasn't done that. So to me, it's a huge issue in that respect. Again, it goes back to the fact that we have an unfair tax structure.
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know what the rate would be, whether it be 5% or 6%. I would have to rely on people that have a lot more experience on taxes than I do. But I'm open to any suggestion from the audience. You can email me and give your views. But perfectly honest, I don't know what the tipping point is as far as where we stand on taxes. But like I said earlier, I would look at the families that live in my neighborhood and retired people and look at how it affects them first. And I think that's how most of Johnson County is, to retired old families. So it does affect them. But like I said, I don't know where the cutoff would be.
I just looked, Missouri's highest bracket is 6%, Nebraska's is 6.8%, and Oklahoma is at 5%.
Can't forget Colorado.
Colorado is at 4.63.
They have another source of revenue.
Yeah.
Tourism, yes.
Skip one.
So the next question is on a couple of related topics that I'm not very familiar with. Linda seems to be the person that these generally would be directed to. It's about House Bill 2019 and the status of the Department of Children and Families and any activity to help improve their situation.
House Bill 2019 is the foster care task force bill that we have been working on in the Children and Seniors Committee. We passed it out of committee. We started with a foster care oversight bill that was similar to what we passed in the House last year, and we did basically a complete rewrite of that and made it a foster care task force rather than an oversight committee. The difference being, we want this to be a group that not just another group to study the problem and create yet another report to go on the shelf, because I have a file this thick of reports on the problems in the foster care system, and add this one to it. This is good information though. It's foster care and adoption in Kansas, reviewing various issues related to the state's foster care and adoption system, part 3. Our committee, our Children and Seniors Committee, took a deep dive this year looking into the problems in the foster care system, and it didn't take us very long before we knew that something needs to be done. The status of the bill, we passed it, we changed it completely, charged that group with meeting at least 6 times to starting this summer, hopefully, if we can get the bill passed, and creating a corrective action plan. In other words, let's get something done rather than just study the problem and report to the legislature next January. The holdup on the bill is the Department of Children and Families is saying that it could cost as much as $48 million, worst case scenario, because if some of the recommendations by this committee would endanger or put them, run afoul of federal rules and regulations and endanger federal funding. That's not our intention at all with this group. And hopefully we can reach add some new language into the bill when we get back next week to clarify what we mean by that corrective action plan. Also, the intent is to have someone from the Department of Children and Families and the 2 contractors, KBC and St. Francis, as ex officio members of the task force, but not voting members of the task force. So they would be there to tell the task force hey, you can't do that because of federal rule 4E or whatever. So we're hoping that this bill will move forward, and then in order to get it past the Senate, at this point, it would probably have to be added, well, I'm sorry, we put it into a Senate bill shell, so the hope is we will get it passed this year.
Now I have education to talk about. You were hoping. I'm not sure of the bits and pieces of these. There are several related questions. One is, how's the education funding going to play out? Another one has a specific reference to HB 2410. And lastly, Senator Boyer's comments on the funding structure and differences between the House and the Senate on funding. That's kind of vague, but I guess they're looking for education structure.
There's a lot that goes into it, of course. And I've been, as I mentioned earlier, I've been able to attend a lot of the meetings to see how things are progressing. And honestly, things didn't really get started until just a couple weeks before we adjourned. And that's when the chairman's bill was introduced in committee. And there was a lot of work to be done on that. Lots of amendments made, that type of thing, because it was not anywhere where it needed to be. In fact, it only added 75 million as far as actual dollars to the whole plan. And that is far from where we need to be. The Kansas School Superintendents Association determined that we need 893 million over 2 to 3 years. So 75 million was somewhat laughable as far as a starting point, but we've been working the way up from there. The current bill increases funding by 752 million in 5 years' time. So it's an incremental addition. Takes us from 3,800 to per pupil to a little over 4,000, about 4,086. So we are getting there. Will it meet the standards? Will it meet the amount of money? We weren't given an amount of money in the Gannon case as far as what it had to be. But based upon what we've heard as far as feedback from the school superintendents and the State Board of Education, we are getting closer. One thing we have to realize is that part of this issue is Kansas ranks 29th in spending. So we have not been putting a whole lot into it, but we are getting great results. We come out 10 on outcomes. So we are pretty efficient. We are doing some things well, and we need to continue to uphold that and keep moving in that direction. 37 states have increased funding more than Kansas since 2009. We are behind, drastically behind. And what has happened is in the past 6 years, and maybe a little longer than that, our teachers haven't had raises. The people who are working with our kids are getting hit the hardest. So we have to fix that. So I would say the majority of us are working towards that. I feel good about what the House has been putting together. There will likely be some amendments coming up, but it is moving in a good direction.
House Bill 2410, as Representative Holscher said, started out funding schools at the level of $75 million, which is not even close to what we need. So since then, there were more than 30 amendments added onto it, and it has now been amended to where it is still not a perfect bill, but it is something I probably could support. It adds, among the things it adds is $2 million in funding for at-risk preschool, 4-year-old preschool, every year from fiscal year 2018 through 22. And it also funds all-day kindergarten. And I know some school districts have already been schools, Shawnee Mission has already been paying for all-day kindergarten, but I have a friend who lives in the DeSoto School District, and she's got a kindergartner next fall. She would have to pay I'm used to talking in millions, $300 per month for her daughter to go to the extra half day of kindergarten. Hopefully that will stay in the ultimate bill that we pass. I know Shawana Elementary School in my district has 3 classrooms for at-risk for 4-year-old preschool, and it's a Title I school. And it's been proven that early childhood education, good early childhood education is the key to long-term success for students. So I'm hopeful that all that funding will stay in the bill. This 2410 looks very similar to the old school funding formula that was instituted in 1992. It has, structurally it does anyway. It has a base state aid for people, although it's not called that anymore, it's called BASE, I'm sorry now, I can't remember what the base stands for. Base aid for student excellence stuff. And it goes up to $4,806 in 2021 and 22, and it includes, after that, the funding will increase according to the level of the consumer price index. It includes weightings for all the different variables that exist between school districts: transportation, at-risk students, which is mostly people with free and reduced lunch, English as a second language, special education. All those weightings are in there for a reason. It was complicated. You know, the criticism of the overall was it was too complicated. Well, it was complicated because it had to be. School funding is a complicated thing. And I think it's yet to be determined, but we're hopeful that House Bill 2410 will meet the equity and adequacy portions of the Constitution that the court has said it has to meet.
I don't know what to add to that other than there are a lot of incredibly intelligent people in the Capitol that have spent years working on school finance formula. My big sticking point after, I don't want to rehash all that, I agree with all of that, is I want to make sure that we increase our local budget option percentage. That has been capped for quite a long time here, and I want us to be able to spend more locally and invest in our local schools, which I think 33% is the cap, and we've maxed out on that pretty much the day they put that cap in place. And so I need to see that percentage move up as part of this reform package, because you go to inflation, you go to all these other things, is we need to be able to spend more money locally here, because I think we've hit our ceiling a long time ago. And in Shawnee Mission, for example, I think there was only one, if any, in the top 10 high schools in Kansas was a Shawnee Mission school. I think East might have been in the top 10. But when I went to Shawnee Mission Northwest and I graduated in 2004, we had 3 Shawnee Mission schools in the top 10. Northwest being one of them. Northwest wasn't in the top 100, I think, now. And so, but yet people say, oh, you have plenty of money, you're fine. Going, well, that's not true at all. So we need to be able to raise more money locally if our residents are willing to put that money in there. So that is a big sticking point for me that I will be fighting for.
I think the bill that the House has worked with is actually a very good compromise bill. It's got a lot of different opinions, and I think it is it does have kind of the foundation of our old formula, but it is pulling some other things where they can use part of the fund for utilities, which was not in the old formula, so it is good. As to Senator Bollier's comment, the Senate, we have not debated, we have not looked at any bills in the Education Committee or the Finance Budget Committee. I think her comment was probably based on conversations with other senators and kind of their idea. At the end of the day, they haven't looked at bills in the committee, so it will be my thought that we will get the House bill, and then the Senate will try to put kind of their thoughts in it. But without actually looking at bills or having hearings, it's kind of hard to say what the Senate position will be at this time. I think Barbara is looking at maybe instead of having weightings, just having a bigger per student or amount. But that sounds great, but, trying to get the votes, and I think the House has done an exceptional job of collaborating and finding a good formula. So it will be interesting to see what the Senate does, but, at this time to say the Senate has a position, we have not had any hearings on an education bill, so you don't know what the Senate position would be.
Well, I look at it just a little bit different as far as the funding for schools. And I said this yesterday, that the first funding bill that comes, I will vote for, mainly to get it in front of the Supreme Court, because they're dictating to us what we're going to spend and how we're going to spend it. And until we find out where they stand, we can do all the funding options that we want until we get an answer from them. And once we send the first bill and vote on it, and it goes to the Supreme Court, they're either going to pass it or they're going to tell us no, this is not good enough. And then we'll have a better understanding of where our funding and financing should be going. My only concern is that the funding should be directed at the classrooms and not at the administrations, because that it seems like as soon as money goes to a school district, the administration takes their cut, and then everything else is left over for classrooms. But I think the first bill is passed. Being the new kid on the block, I'm probably looking at it probably pretty simple. But the Supreme Court is going to dictate to us the first time we pass a bill and send it, and they're going to look at it, or someone's going to bring it in front of them. We're going to find out hopefully where they stand and where we need to go from there.
I just want to add one thing. Under House Bill 2410, the Shawnee Mission School District would gain $9.9 million a year.
Thank you. That's a complicated topic, and we could probably be here for a lot longer, and you can continue to go into details. As you know, we're just wrapping up our time for today. There's a question about whether you would expect any more legislative activity on voter registration issues yet this year.
And also, if we could do speed round, about 30 seconds apiece, so that we get the last few questions in before the end.
I don't know that we'll see any bills this session on that. I imagine there will be many be crafted in the in-between, and that we'll see many issues on voter registration coming up in the 2018 session.
I'll take that answer since we're wrapping up. Do you mind? I thought I would end on this note. You guys get lots of comments from constituents. This is a thank you note for Linda and Tom for their support with all of their concerns of the Department of Children and Families in KBC, and that you've been awesome. So it's nice to have a positive note, and not that this has been a negative event, but I know you might get a negative comment in your inbox now and then. I apologize if your question didn't get asked. You can tell I combined them and summarized them and did various things. And see me if you're mad afterwards. All the legislatures have their email addresses and phone numbers on their websites. You can contact them. I didn't hear anybody say show up at my door, so you might avoid that opportunity for contact. On behalf of today's attendees, let's thank our legislatures for convening this town hall. And thanks for you all for coming today. It's an important opportunity to learn from your legislatures. I heard that there's a couple of elected officials that came in since I've been doing questions and answers, and they raised their hands. I see 1, 2, thank you for coming. Appreciate that. With that, we're formally adjourned, but please stay and chat with your legislators. Have this room until noon, and thank you for attending. One more comment.
I just wanted to thank the Lenexa Chamber of Commerce for helping to organize this, and Ashley Sherrard for all of her assistance. Mike, I also want to thank you for moderating. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We may have another town hall in 3 months. How's that for a prospect? Thank you, everyone.